And a hearty good morning to you. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Marlon Bowling, your tour guide to the ag commodities. And yes, indeed, we're getting the stage all set here for today's trade on a Thursday. And it's going to be our final full trading week of the year. Things will be abbreviated next week. Of course, we're going to be celebrating the official observance of Christmas, according to the markets and government offices, next Monday. That means there will be no trading taking place next Monday. Not only that, it's a little bit unusual because Monday evening, there will not be any Globex trade either. So that means we're going to have what they call a cold open next Tuesday. So once we get to the close on Friday of this week, it's going to be a long dry spell before we get any trading again. And just keep that in mind as we get toward the end of the year here. And then we'll kind of rinse and repeat the same thing the following week then because of New Year's falling on a weekend as well. We have Brian Hoops with us, and he is the president of Midwest Market Solutions. He hails from Springfield, Missouri. And Brian, we just got our new weekly export sales numbers out. I want to take a look at what we had here on the corn and soybean numbers, and I want to get your thoughts on this. So for the corn, I see 636,800 tons, and that's for the current marketing year. I didn't see anything for a year out. Soybeans, 876,000 tons. That would be combined this year and next year. We have soy meal at 311,000 tons, and we have soy oil at only 800. And the wheat came in at 334,200 tons this time around. Biggest buyer of all places was Unknown Destinations, so kind of mysterious there. But Brian, your thoughts on these numbers? Not quite what we're used to, I guess, are they?
No, good morning, Marlon. These export numbers are probably a little bit below expectations. You know, we thought they would be down this week because last week's private sale announcements were pretty sparse, and we're looking at the same thing again next week. This week's export private sales very limited as far as corn and soybean sales have gone. We had nothing to report this morning, and of course, next week, once you get into the holiday mode, you only have 4 days to see those export sales. And we really expect during the holiday timeframe that sales do slow down. But these numbers were not a disaster by any means. It was about 25 million bushels of corn, 27 for soybeans, 12 for the wheat market. But again, below expectations, really nothing that's going to sway the trade one direction or another. And you gave a good synopsis of what's happening this weekend as far as trade and a cold opening on Tuesday. Also, January grain options expire Friday, and we do have a normal close on Friday. A lot of questions if we close earlier, close normal. It's a normal close. January grain options go off the board that day.
That's a good point as well. I'm glad you brought that up. Well, as we get into this time of year, no matter what these weekly export numbers are, I don't know if the trade would really put a lot of weight into it anyway, would it, at this time of year?
Yeah, usually not. You know, this time of year, you're getting the very low volume type trades because, as you mentioned, it's only 4 days next week, and the following week it's only another 4 days. So a lot of traders just taking a lot of time off with the holidays and not even doing anything. We'll see some exaggerated moves because of the lesser volume. You'll also see a lot of technical type trades where we try and run some stops above previous day's highs or lows, for example, and you'll see some really jerky type trade every once in a while. So it's really not a great environment where you want to study the fundamentals real hard and expect that they're going to really ring true this year. You know, you're going to see probably a loss of basis in a lot of areas because of the cold temperatures. Ethanol plants are going to shut down here for a few days. They're losing a little bit of margins, but it's also extremely cold to try and you know, have workers out there trying to work in those cold conditions. So that backs off the basis levels a little bit, and that could lead to some lower market prices.
Okay, we'll follow up on that in just a second. We're talking with Brian Hoops. We'll have more right after this. I want to make sure I run through the overnight trade on the close on Globex. Let's look at corn with our quotes provided by bar chart. Corn didn't do much. March was just down 1/4 cent at 6.62. We had the soybeans finishing the overnight trade with March down 4 3/4 at 14.79 3/4. Over on the wheat in Chicago, we'll go with that March contract there. Down 3/4 at 7.67. July was up 1/2 cent. Kansas City wheat overnight We had the March up 3/4 at 864 3/4. Very, very quiet overnight. Minneapolis wheat, we had the March unchanged at 927 3/4. Real quickly, before we look at the beef and pork numbers, Brian, we're talking with Brian Hoops. Do you think this is a case of buy the rumor, sell the fact when it came to this winter storm?
Well, it could be. I think there probably is going to be some damage done. It's really too early to determine how much damage has actually been done. But from the standpoint that a lot of this crop was sowed in very shallow soils because of lack of moisture this fall, and was in a really poor condition going into dormancy, you get these high winds blowing across the plains without any insulation of snow to keep those roots intact. There's going to be some root damage, some crops being actually dislodged. But again, it's too early to determine how much damage is actually caused out there. But there is going to be significant damage, I think, across some of these plain states.
Okay, let's look at the beef and pork export numbers that came out this morning. Kind of a surprise here on the beef side. Got a total of 11,700 tons. That was a bit of a yawner, but wow, look at pork, 74,800 tons. And the net purchases by China was only a little over 2,000 tons.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, but you beat me to it. Those are huge pork numbers. But China didn't hardly account for anything of the U.S. pork. It was Mexico that was the biggest buyer. They are really ramping up purchases right now of U.S. pork products. And so if you get a combination of Mexico and China buying our pork products, you really are going to have some very strong exports going into 2023. So hopefully that trend continues. But yeah, as I mentioned, China, not much of a buyer, but Mexico certainly made up for it. That's a big number for pork sales and should see some sort of a reaction on the opening this morning.
Just remember, on the close yesterday on live cattle futures, we'll get you updated here for a point of reference. On the live cattle board here, we'll take a look at the February. It was up 212 yesterday. Very strong session. Finished at 157.70. Didn't see much cash cattle trade. March feeders were 70 higher at 185.72. And on the lean hogs yesterday, we finished the day with February up 415. Can they follow through today? We'll find out in just a little bit. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions. Janet, we're about ready to begin today.